Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Game Brigade. I am Brian Greer, and today on the show, we're going to be taking a look at the games that I'm most hyped for coming into the end of October. You see, there's been a lot of games hitting lately on Kickstarter, and I've been trying my hardest to stay as good as I can and not back games and try to save as much money. But there's a lot of good stuff coming here at the end of the month. I'm going to talk about the ones I'm most interested in, and then we'll kind of see later what we're going to do in the rest of the month in terms of backing. So without further ado, let's hit it. That was kind of an interesting transition. I thought, let's hit it. I don't know. You guys might think it was interesting. I think it was interesting. But first, before we get into the games that I want to talk about, there were two big games that I covered this month on The Breakdown. If you don't know what The Breakdown is, it's where I dive deep into a game, talk about the mechanics so that you guys can make an educated decision on whether to back a game based on the core mechanics of the gameplay. So I did one on Voidfall, we did one on Fractal. I kind of wanted to talk about what I decided to do with these two games personally after the fact. So the first one was Voidfall. This came on Kickstarter, had a relatively decent standard box, but the reality is if I was going to go in on this, I was going to come in at the Galactic box because I'd want the upgraded components. It would feel like, to me, that's where the game would be. But the reality is I truly believe that this game is a Euro game in a 3 to 4 hour shell with a veneer of a 4X space game. I wasn't in love with the art direction here, especially with these galactic space maps. It didn't feel like a galaxy to me. And so I asked myself, am I looking for a Euro? Do I need another Euro? I've got some incredible Euros, some of the best Euros out there. Do I need another one? And is this going to be a game that's going to be tabled enough to make it worth the $150 that the Galactic box is roughly going to cost, minus, that's not including shipping. You know, we're almost looking at $200, you know, when you're all said and done. And so I didn't think it was there for me in terms of what I was looking for. It looks like it's going to be a great game. I don't doubt that there's going to be a lot of people who love this game, but for me, I didn't think Voidfall was it. And so I didn't back it. So that was the first game we covered this month. The second game we covered was Fractal. And Fractal was the 4X game by Board Game Inc. And they're a relatively newer company in terms of Kickstarters. And so there was some, inexperience you could tell with their design. And when you actually start diving into it, checking out the rulebook, I just don't know if there's enough here to compel me to try it when I've got other 4X games and other war games that I enjoy playing. I would play Fractal. If a friend had Fractal and they bought it, I would not say no. I would love to try Fractal. But to jump in at this one here, another $140 game, it just didn't incentivize me enough at this stage to say yes. Now, if this is in retail, if I see this in retail, and so I don't have to pay shipping, and there's an opportunity at that point that I might consider jumping in at that point. But for right now, Fractal is another game that I'm holding off on. So with that, we've got the new games. This one is Unbreakable Too Many Bones. This is becoming the Game Found. If you are not, you should definitely follow because they are giving a free gift for people who follow. So if you are planning to back this game, I highly recommend following to get to the free gifts. And what these are, they're not like make or break it. If you don't have these in your game, don't be upset and think you have an incomplete game. Let me first say that, because these are loot that you get in the game, and one of them looks like a trove chest, and the other two are standard loot, and they're okay. You don't get that much loot. You get loot, but you don't get that much loot, and the stack of loot is pretty high. So the opportunity to actually have these or play with these is going to be a little lower. But I'm hyped for Too Many Bones, mostly because I have everything. I really enjoy this system. I have yet to make a review, and I really want to make a review of Too Many Bones. I really have no excuse. I've played it a lot. I love it. Basically, the game is where you're going to be playing a Gearlock, who is the character here in the middle, and you are going to be upgrading and customizing your character using their special set of dice as well as their skills to, as you go through the dungeon, the adventure rather. It's not a dungeon crawler, it's an adventure. I do want to make sure people are warned when they're looking at this game that it's not like a standard game. It's very abstract in terms of the way the game sets. It's almost like look at chess and think of how that is supposed to represent a battlefield. That's the same way with Too Many Bones. It is abstract of a battlefield where you have chips and you're moving around as you do your abilities and your events and whatnot. I really, really love the game personally, enough so that I have the entire trove chest with everything for it. So I'm definitely looking forward to checking it out. They do have an all-in, the ultimate completionist tier if you're looking for getting all in on this one, but it is expensive, $1,100. Now, this does include non-gameplay related content. So people are saying, wow, that's a lot of cash for an all-in, but this is also including promos and whatnot, books, and so it's expensive, but you're getting other stuff as well. I'm looking at this one right here, the Unbreakable Hero Pledge. This will basically have everything that I need to complete the Too Many Bones experience. And I'm also looking at getting some of the promos that I don't have in my collection, because that'd be a great way to finally complete my set. Love the game, super excited for it. And this is one of the reasons why I wasn't able to back those two other games, because there's other games fighting for my dollars. The next game I want to take a look at here will be Lords of Ragnarok. Now, I actually have a copy of this game on the way for my review, and I have already played this game remotely, so I haven't actually played it physically in hand, but I have played it remotely, so I have a little bit of idea of how this plays. Now, I've played a lot of aerial control games, and I've played a lot of war games, skirmish games. I would say this does have elements of both. I would say it's not a true area control game. It's not a true skirmish game. So if you're looking for a blending, if you are a person who plays area control games, think like Ankh, Blood Rage, those type of games where you play them in a more of a strategic war element, like you're attacking, you're trying to set up your borders. Do you think you're playing it in a competitive, not competitive, but a combat mindset? Those games don't work that way, because the game incentivizes you sometimes to sacrifice your own guys, or instead of fighting the fight, you build a temple. They're abstract war games. The strategy is not in the combat, but more so in the way the best way to score points. While Lords of Ragnarok is not a true skirmish war game where you're just trying to eliminate your opponents like Warhammer or something. It's more, or Risk or something. If you're thinking about Risk of a war game, you are still trying to control territories, control temples so you can pray and have priests, but the combat is more involved, which I like. Now, there is other elements of this game. The other thing I really like is that there are multiple ways you can try to achieve victory. And so as a player, you have to kind of look and say, okay, what are people trying to do? What is their current route for strategy? Or do they have one? You've got attacking enemies to eventually get to Loki. You've got controlling temples. You've got grand domination. There's a lot of ways to do it. Or are they prepping themselves up for a Ragnarok victory, which is something you could totally do. You can just plan for the inevitable and say, we're going to Ragnarok. So I really like the idea of this one. I like the blending of the two worlds. I don't necessarily think a lot of people are going to enjoy it. And I do think these minis that they're showing here are very misleading in terms of what you're expecting. These minis are monuments that you're going to be building in the game that your people will pray to, but they aren't necessarily used as miniatures in the game to play. So as you see here, they're building and see how it's multiple stages. You have level 1, level 2, and level 3. And so you see how they're building them up. And so as you pray and as you build the monuments, they increase more benefits. But in the games that I've played, the two that we've done through, it was very unlikely that we ever saw more than one monument fully constructed, because by the time that happened, the game was pretty much over. So yes, you're going to have these incredible miniatures. I just don't know how much they're going to be needed or valued in the game. They're still great. Now, the dragons and the monsters here, they're on the board. They're great. Their aspects of the game are well represented. The miniatures here for each faction, great. I love their look. These are well represented. So there's still dudes on a map, and there's still more strategy to this than other war games. Also, I mean, think about it. With war games, you're limited to only 6 warriors. So most war games give you a lot more units to move around. So it's still using that limited area control style type of mechanic where you're stuck with a certain amount of units. But it does encourage you to go to combat, and combat is more rewarding to me than other combat games. So this one is another one that I'm very much looking forward to. You can see the core box coming at $115, a little less than the core box for Too Many Bones that I'm looking at. But you're going to know that there's going to be an all-in on this one. It's going to have a lot of stuff, got to have a lot of expansions. And when we do the breakdown of Lords of Ragnarok, it's because we're going to have that's when we're going to have a better picture of everything. And we're going to break down the mechanics. We're going to teach you guys exactly what this game is, and so if it's worth it for you to back. So make sure you tune in for that episode. The next game I want to talk about here is Resident Evil, the board game. Now, why do I have this highlighted? Funny enough, the very first video that I did on this channel was for Resident Evil 3, the board game. And I just kind of talked about if I'm currently, I think the episode was called Currently Backing, is that I was talking about like what I was backing and not backing. Resident Evil 3, I decided not to back. And I've heard great things about Resident Evil 2, but it had some issues. I heard Resident Evil 3 was supposed to fix some of those things, but still has some issues. Resident Evil, as a franchise in the video game space, has been one of my favorite franchises. I played them in middle school. I loved the games, had them on my original PlayStation. Resident Evil 2, in fact, was my favorite game, followed closely by Resident Evil. Now, the theme, though, of the location for Resident Evil in the mansion is one of my favorites. And so I really am curious how Steamforged Games has taken the IP, how they've improved more on that mechanic for the Resident Evil gameplay, and how does the actual feel of Resident Evil translate. So there's not a lot of information here for me to actually dive into what's happening. The game's coming out very soon, so I wish they'd have more information for content creators to kind of get an idea to tell you guys. But all I can tell you is this is the third in line, even though it's technically the first in the itinerary. It's the third in line of the series. So it's given them time to kind of work through the kinks and find out what works and what's not working and keep working on that. So that is what makes me more excited for it. The final one that I want to talk about is Marvel Dice Throne. Now, Dice Throne as a game is not one that I have ever played myself, but I will tell you, I've seen it on so many content creators' shelves when they're doing videos. Dice Throne's always somewhere in the back, and I'm like, man, am I missing something not playing this game? You're going to be taking on a hero, and you're going to have powers and abilities. You're going to be rolling dice with their special dice to win, and I like everything that sounds like. Like, that sounds cool. It's kind of like Too Many Bones. You have your special dice, and you're using those special dice to perform abilities. Marvel has kind of come out of nowhere for me, which is weird. Like, Marvel's been a big thing for years, but I've never been a Marvel fanboy. But recently, me and my wife have started going through watching Marvel through the timeline. So starting with Captain America and then Captain Marvel, we're moving our way through the series in order. It has revitalized my interest in the franchise. And everything's making more sense now for me. Like, everything's clicking and you're understanding. So we just got through Iron Man 2. Then I believe it is we're about to start Thor, but we need better speakers because my speakers are like blown or something. It doesn't sound good. So we're waiting for that. But anyways, tangent aside, Marvel Dice Throne is one that I don't know a lot about. Never played the original, but I'm curious to see what it looks like once it comes on Kickstarter. So those are the ones that I am most interested in. So we're going to swing it back to my face. This was a new video that I wanted to talk to you about. We're just going to keep that in. That's what I do, by the way. Whenever I say something stupid, and then I stop. But we're going to keep it in. These are the games that I'm most excited for. I've been looking at a bunch of other games. I try to not focus on the ones I'm not interested in anymore because it's a lot of brain power to remember every single game and say which ones am I most excited about. Let's figure out what they are and if they're worth backing or not. Is it worth my dollar, or do I need to save it for another game? Because there's always going to be another game. So I'm always looking for the ones that are the best, that have the best reasons to back now versus saving for later. So hopefully this video kind of opened up in terms of letting you guys know what I'm interested in. Are you interested in any of them? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you really want to support the channel, remember, thumbs up, give me a like. It greatly supports me, more than you might know. And with that, we're going to go and call it. So this is Brian from Game Brigade. I will hope you're all doing a great day. I hope you're all doing great. I'll talk to you very soon. Bye-bye.